Todd McShay's latest mock draft features 4 Georgia players projected to go in the first round, all of them on the defensive side. Since the common draft era began in 1967, there have only been 2 schools that had 4 players go in the first round of the NFL draft. It happened for 2004 Miami, and then again 2 years later for Florida State. So, Matt, nobody could hold this defense last season, right? But what should we be focused on with them as we head into the draft and try to evaluate the individual pieces of the defense?
Well, that's the hard part when you have 6 players in my top 50 just on defense from Georgia. And by the way, 2 players who'll probably be in the top 10 next year. They were that good, guys. So I think that is the hard part sometimes. Pulling the players out individually and trying to evaluate them. Is the sum better than the parts? I think is what you worry about with Georgia.
No doubt.
When you're Nakobe Dean and you're 6 foot tall, 225 pounds, you get Jordan Davis in front of you. You're probably not going to have that in the NFL. So I think that is one of the big questions. Will some of these guys suffer when they don't have elite talent around them at every position, basically?
Yeah, I called a couple of Georgia games this year and played against that early 2000s Miami defense. And I remember on the broadcast saying, this Georgia defense reminded me of that early Miami team. And you guys saw the 2014 that had 4 first-rounders on the defensive side of the football. So going into some of those Georgia games, I started making some calls to some people saying, okay, how many first-rounders are going to be on this defense? Because on tape, they remind me of that Hurricanes team. And the answer I got from basically everybody was, maybe 1. And in that moment, I was like, wait, what? Like, what do you mean? How these guys all should be first rounders? And kind of, Matt, to your point, they were like, it's almost the rising tide lifts all ships. Was everybody made so much better because they all played at such a kind of tight unit? I also say this, I had some coaches going into those games, you know, kind of say offensively, the opponent that they were playing against, listen, we are just going to try to run the football. We're going to try to huddle up, slow the game down because we know we can't do anything against that defense. And I think that might lead to some of the explanation of why maybe the individual statistics aren't just off the charts.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
Such a powerhouse defense. So because we were having this conversation today, I reached out to Kirby Smart, the head coach of the Georgia Bulldogs, to get his take on this defense and how you really do evaluate them.
What did he say?
Here's what he said. I realize you're like, oh, he's biased, but I think this adds a lot of context. He said none of these guys had gaudy stat numbers because they played together. Other guys out there are going to have more tackles than Nakobe Dean or more sacks than Trayvon Walker, more snaps played than Jordan Davis. And because they played with other great players, it was actually harder to accumulate them. It was a race to the ball, which we saw that so many times. He said, but all you have to do is watch the tape to see the caliber of player they are, watch the unselfishness they had to rotate in and out. And by how they played the game, they didn't just run out there try to make plays for themselves. That's how you see what type of teammate you're getting, what type of guy you're getting for the organization that drafts them. He then, of course, went on to say at one point in time it was called the no-name defense, gave a lot of credit to his staff as well for all of that. So, Mina, when you think about how you evaluate this Georgia defense, you've watched a ton of their tape. Who stands out to you among these players?
Well, I think it's hard not to talk about Trayvon Walker when you see him being mocked at 2 on Todd's board. I mean, what a rise this guy's had post, wrecking the combine and showing off his incredible athletic tools. And you have to reconcile what you see on tape, those tools, with what Kirby alluded to there, Laura, which is the lack of production. I mean, we're talking about a player who had less than 10 sacks, I believe, over the course of his college career. In his final season, had a pressure rate that was about half of Kayvon Thibodeau and Aiden Hutchinson, and now is being mocked above some of those players. I think it's largely because people are evaluating the tape, saying he was used differently. He wasn't asked to line up outside on the entire game and pin his ears back the way Hutchinson and Thibodeau were. He was used inside more to engage blockers for the linebackers. But boy, that is a high draft pick for a player with that level of production. I'm actually not sure there's much precedent for it, so I'd be fascinated to see how it plays out.
Ooh, two, y'all. Listen, I think Walker is a phenomenal player. He's super raw and has the ability. His athleticism is why people are enamored. His ability to move, big physical guy, to run down against Alabama on the wide receiver was one of the best plays I've seen in college. Look at him take off and get to this ball using the correct angle. These are the type of things that get you to move up on a draft board, because coaches look at that and they say, let's put him in position to make plays, and he has the athleticism to do it. 2 is a bit high for me. But when you look at this Georgia defense, and El Boogie and I was covering SEC at SEC Network when Alabama in I forgot what year, but they were putting everybody lights out.
They had
with
a few of
Jonathan
those.
Allen and Deron Payne and all of these guys up front. And they didn't have that gaudy production either because it was by committee. I think when you break each individual guy down from the University of Georgia, one thing you think about, and I talk to y'all all the time about this, is how do you play within structure with the guys that are around you? That is a plus when you either open things up or you are the beneficiary of other guys doing their job at a very high level. When you look at all of these guys up front, physicality, the athleticism, and the ability to play the run and pass.
But let me, hold on, Marcus. Let me push back on you, though.
And that is what's going to set them apart.
Let me push back on you, though, because here's my thing. I'm not taking you at 2 as a defensive end to play well with others, technically. I'm taking you at 2 because you got to change my defense. Right. And I think that's the hang-up for some of these teams, right? Is like, do they believe that those guys are that player?
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.